So continuing my exploration of GraphicsMagick inside of Lucee CFML, one of the actions that I need to perform is to overlay an image using a partial transparency over another image. So you can see in this case I have a checkered background and I've overlaid this picture of my dog Lucy on the beach, and you can see that the checkered background is partially visible below this overlay. So in order to do this in GraphicsMagick, I had hoped to be able to create a single command, but I wasn't able to do that. Instead, I came up with two different solutions, both of which require two different GraphicsMagick commands and an intermediary image. So let's look at the first approach. So in the first approach, the intermediary image, which I'm going to be storing using the MIF or Magic Image File format, represents our partially transparent overlay. So we're going to be taking our input image, which is my dog on the beach. We're going to be scaling it down to 300 by 224 pixels. We're going to use the matte operation to ensure that the given image has an active opacity channel. If we don't, then our attempt to assign an opacity will actually be ignored. And then we're going to assign an opacity of 20%. Now, I think technically the term opacity has a hard meaning, an academic meaning, where you might think of a 20% transparency as actually having an 80% opacity. So I think this operation here, I don't know if it's being true to that definition or if I'm just not understanding exactly what the operation is doing, but essentially what we're going to do is create an intermediary image that has an opacity of 20%, or really an opacity of 80%, given a more academic meaning. Again, we're going to be saving that as a temporary file. Then we're going to be using the convert and our draw operation to overlay that intermediary image on top of our base checkerboard. So all I'm going to do is paste the intermediary image over the current image at a particular location, and I'm just going to tell to use 0, 0 dimensions, which means, or indicates to GraphicsMagick to use the natural dimensions of the image. So in this case, again, the intermediary image is our already transparent or already partially transparent overlay, and then all we're doing in this case is drawing that already transparent overlay as is over the base image, and we get this output. So in a second version, which looks almost like the first version, although if I go back and forth you can see that it's actually a 1 pixel difference on the width, so there's some minor discrepancies there. In the second version, or the second solution here, again we're going to be using an intermediary image, except in this case the intermediary image isn't the overlay, it's the background, right? So it's very simple. All we're doing is creating that checkered background. We're storing it as that MIF file format. I use the MIF file format because according to the maintainer of GraphicsMagick, MIF is a lossless file format that's actually more performant than PNG. So it's really good for temporary file creation with GraphicsMagick. So once we have our intermediary image, we're going to be then using the composite command. So in the first approach, we use the convert command. So in this, we're going to be using the composite command to composite the source image, the dog on the beach, over our checkerboard. So in this case, we're going to be using the dissolve operation to take some percentage of that overlay. So whereas in the first approach, you can see that we're setting an opacity of 20%. In this second approach with the dissolve operation, we're sort of inverting that number. So instead of setting an opacity of 20%, the dissolve operation takes some percentage of the source image. So in this case, we want to take 80% of the color values in that source image, and we want to overlay that over our intermediary file, which is our checkerboard, and then we're going to save that as the output. So we're going to take 80% of that incoming image to create that 20% opacity of the overlay over our checkerboard and output the final result there. And again, we get here the pretty much the exact same thing that we got in our first example. So hopefully maybe there's a way to actually combine these approaches into a single command, I couldn't figure it out. Pouring through the documentation, looking at Google, this seems to be the two approaches that I was able to find and to come up with. So anyway, just a continued exploration of GraphicsMagick, and yeah, I'm getting close to being able to solve out all of my business use cases that I know of at this time. So that's pretty exciting.